Welcome to Essentials of Acute Care. I am Dr. Sunil Garg, and today I am going to discuss the concept which surrounds intracranial pressure, and I will also discuss rage intracranial pressure and the utility of hyperventilation in the management of rage intracranial pressure. Rage intracranial pressure is a potentially devastating complication of neurological injuries, and neurological injuries can be due to trauma or medical regions like in stroke patients. Whenever there is any neurological insult to the brain is injured in two ways. One is because of the primary neurological injury process itself, and another because of the raised intracranial pressure. Normal intracranial pressure is less than 50 mm of Hg in adults, and normal intracranial volume is 1400 to 1700 ml. Out of this much volume, 80% is comprised by the brain parenchyma, 10% by cerebrospinal fluid, and 10% by blood. Whenever there is increase in the intracranial pressure, either one of these components or there may be addition of another pathological component which is a cause of raised intracranial pressure. How raised intracranial pressure causes brain injury? It causes brain injury by two mechanisms, either by the brainstem compression and or by the reduction in the cerebral blood flow. The important causes of raised intracranial pressure includes mass lesions, cerebral edema. It could be due to increased CSF production or decreased CSF absorption in meningitis because of obstructive hydrocephalus, and it could be due to venous outflow obstructions, or region may be idiopathic. The clinical manifestations of raised intracranial pressures are divided into global manifestations and manifestations due to the local effects. The common global manifestations includes headache, depressed consciousness, and vomiting, while local manifestations occur because of mass lesions and because of herniation. Before going further, we look into some basics of cerebral blood flow. Cerebral blood flow increases with hypoxia and hypercapnia, while it decreases with hypocapnia. CPP is cerebral perfusion pressure, and it is clinical surrogate for cerebral perfusion adequacy. Means whenever there is any patient with the rise in the intracranial pressure, to maintain the CPP or cerebral perfusion pressure in such patient, we need to increase the mean arterial pressure. Here it is important to understand that cerebral blood flow is normally maintained relatively constant over the wide range of CPP of 50 to 100 mm of mercury. This is what we called autoregulation. The diagnosis of raised intracranial pressure is based on medical history, imaging studies, and clinical manifestations. The common CT finding includes mass lesion, cerebral edema, midline shift, and presence of abnormal systems. The common clinical manifestations include hole in GCS, abnormal pupillary findings like unilaterally or bilaterally dilated pupils, or abnormal reactions, and abnormal posturing, which includes decorticate or decerebrate posturing, presence of bradycardia, hypertension, and or respiratory depression. There are some situations where ICP should be managed urgently. It is based on the diagnosis of raised intracranial pressure based on history and clinical examination. The clinical examination findings include abnormal pupil and abnormal posturing, the presence of bradycardia, hypertension, and or respiratory depression in the presence of GCS 8 or less. Here it is important to remember, before treating the RAGE ICP as a cause of altered mentation, you have to rule out the absence of any reversible cause like the presence of hypotension, hypoxemia, or hypoglycemia. Hyperventilation is one of the treatment modality for RAGE intracranial pressure. Before going into the use of hyperventilation, let's have a look what is hyperventilation and how it works. Hyperventilation is about achieving arterial PCO2 of 26 to 30 mm of mercury. It rapidly reduces intracranial pressure through vasoconstriction and subsequent decrease in the volume of intracranial blood. It is done for patients on mechanical ventilation, and 1 mm decrease in the PCO2 decreases the flow by 3%. Effect on ICP is short-lived and it is in the range of the 1 to 24 hours. It is an urgent intervention, so it should not be used on a chronic basis. The damaging effect of the vasoconstriction due to hyperventilation causes critical decrease in the perfusion, and it may worsen the neurological injury, particularly in the first 24 to 48 hours. Hyperventilation on one hand decreases ICP, and on the other hand it reduces cerebral blood flow. The use of the hyperventilation should be minimized in the presence of traumatic brain injury and in the presence of acute stroke. The use of prophylactic hyperventilation in the absence of elevated ICP should be avoided. So when we should really use the hyperventilation? It should be used when the signs and symptoms suggest imminent brain herniation in association with the raised intracranial pressure. Always remember, hyperventilation should only be used as a temporizing measure while other therapy takes its effect. Thanks for watching the video. I hope this video was useful for you. If you have any concern or comments, you can write down in the comment section box. Once again, thanks for watching the video.